This episode of CppCast is sponsored by Backtrace, the turnkey debugging platform that helps you spend less time debugging and more time building. Get to the root cause quickly with detailed information at your fingertips. Start your free trial at backtrace.io/CppCast. And by JetBrains, maker of intelligent development tools to simplify your challenging tasks and automate the routine ones. JetBrains is offering a 25% discount for an individual license on the C++ tool of your choice, CLion, ReSharper C++, or AppCode. Use the coupon code JetBrains for CppCast during checkout at jetbrains.com. Episode 128 of CppCast with guest Victor Ciura, recorded November 27th, 2017. In this episode, we talk about workplace tech talks and toys for young coders. Then we talk to Victor Ciura from Caphyon. Victor talks to us about bringing Clang Tidy Magic to Visual Studio C++ developers. Welcome to episode 128 of CppCast, the only podcast for C++ developers by C++ developers. I'm your host, Rob Irving, joined by my co-host, Jason Turner. Jason, how you doing today?
Doing well, Rob. How are you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. Recovering from Turkey Day and everything. You have a good holiday weekend?
Yeah, I was with my family, my wife's family. It was a very small gathering, so it wasn't a bunch of crazy overloading on, football and food. But yes, it was nice.
Yeah, I had a pretty laid back one myself. Okay, well, at the top of every episode, I like to read a piece of feedback. This week, we got a tweet from Augmented Reality, and I guess they found our episode from last week with Dave Moore from Oculus Research saying, very interesting podcast episode of CppCast with Dave Moore from Oculus Reg Research for AR/VR glasses. So yeah, it was a really interesting discussion, and we talked a lot about the AR and VR stuff without necessarily going too much about the C++ components, but I thought all of that was really interesting.
I thought it was a ton of fun, personally. Yeah. It was, I could have just talked about some of those things and picking his brain for hours, probably.
Yeah, definitely. Well, we'd love to hear your thoughts about the show as well. You can always reach out to us on Facebook, Twitter, or email us at feedback@cppcast.com, and don't forget to leave us a review on iTunes. Joining us today is Victor Ciura. Victor is a senior software engineer at Caphyon and technical lead on the advanced installer team. For over a decade, he designed and implemented several core components and libraries of advanced installer, such as IIS, Repackager, OS virtualization, and others. He's a regular guest at computer science department of his alma mater, the University of Craiova, where he gives student lectures and workshops using C++ STL for competitive programming and software development. Currently, he spends most of his time working with his team on improving and extending the repackaging and virtualization technologies in Advanced Installer, helping clients migrate their Win32 desktop apps to the Windows Store. Victor, welcome to the show.
Hey, it's good to be here.
So, can you tell us a little bit more about this Advanced Installer? I don't think I've heard of it before.
I actually have used this. I'm using this at my company right now. So I'm familiar with it a bit. Yeah.
So I found a customer. Excellent. Hope you're happy with it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So the reason Jason hasn't heard of it yet because he's not living too much in Windows world, I think. So Advanced Installer is an IDE helping Windows developers package and deploy their applications on Windows platform. Exclusively on Windows.
Okay.
So at the same time, we address sysadmins and IT pros that have enterprise deployment and provisioning requirements for their software infrastructure. So you really got to be deep in Windows to know Advanced Installer.
Almost everything I work on is actually cross-platform, but I use whatever installer tools that Cmake prefers. So Insys on Windows specifically is what I've tended to use.
Yeah.
I recently switched from Insys to Advanced Installer.
Okay.
Good choice, Rob. Good choice. So I actually know NSys, and it's a freeware installer framework, and it's very scriptable and friendly for that. That's why it integrates very well with Cmake, because it's amenable to scripting. So, but good choice, Rob. I'd stick with Advanced Installer.
Well, then, if you don't mind my asking, does Advanced Installer work with Cmake?
No.
Okay.
We don't have any actual Cmake support, but we do have a CLI interface, and soon we're going to add a PowerShell interface, so you can integrate it via command line for now.
Okay, so it could be done.
It could be done, yeah, but you have to learn the specific syntax for interacting with it via the REPL.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, well, Victor, we got a couple news articles to discuss. Feel free to comment on any of these, and then we'll start talking more about the work you did with Clang Power Tools, okay?
Cool.
Okay. So this first one is a really great trip report for Meeting C++ from Simon Brand, and it's very long. He went into a pretty good description of all of the talks he went to, including some of the side talks and lightning talks, which weren't necessarily recorded or listed in the schedule, but it sounds like he had a great time.
Yes, it did. And I want to call out Jonathan Vacarro's talk. We had him on the show. Mm-hmm. And Simon's, who has also been on the show, he says this talk was quite a struggle against technical difficulties, starting 15 minutes late.
Yeah, I was actually in that talk.
Oh.
So, yeah, he had some technical issues with the display adapter or something like that. HDMI adapter. We started late, but it was a very, very good talk.
Yeah, I was there also, actually.
Yeah.
I just wanted to point out that Jonathan did a spectacular job of just like, once it got started, he just went straight through his talk at a perfectly even pace and got done exactly on time still.
Yeah.
It was amazing.
Yeah. You kind of thought it was going to run late, or maybe he would have to skip some slides or anything, but I guess he adapted very well to the time constraint, and the talk itself was very instructive. I very much liked it right from the start, so I'm a big fan of Jonathan's. I follow his blog regularly, so...
Yes, it's a great blog to follow.
I very much enjoyed his talk at Meeting C++. And I actually met Simon as well. We just briefly chatted via the CPP Slack channels, so I never met him. And I got the chance to meet Simon at Berlin. And we actually chatted, and I saw his talk as well about debuggers. Did you see that?
I missed that one. I'm looking forward to seeing it when it's on YouTube.
Yeah. It was very instructive for me, as I'm not very familiar with the GDB and LLDB. I'm more familiar with how Windows debuggers work. And it was very instructive for me, and I think he did a very good job on it. So
excellent.
I learned a lot. I hope you like it when you see it.
There's also, and what you mentioned, getting to meet Simon, and you had only known him on Slack before, and this is one of the comments that he makes here, too, that he had a wonderful time meeting those whom he had only ever met on Twitter or Slack before. And I'm seeing this kind of community thing growing, it seems, continuously at the conferences. People are like really connecting who only knew each other online before. And
exactly.
It seems to be changing rapidly. 2 years ago, I didn't feel like I saw the same thing, and now I do.
That's great.
Yeah. People get very friendly at conferences, especially after the sessions finish in the hotel lobbies or the conference venues or at dinner over drinks. So even between sessions on the hallways during lunch breaks or something like that, I think I think that's the best part of the conference, because you can always catch the videos online, but the conversations you have right there ad hoc with meeting people and exchanging the ideas, and people are very open and friendly to talk to perfect strangers and get acquainted and sharing the passion the stuff they work on, and they even discuss their favorite talks so far. So that's always very interesting to hear. Or maybe you hear a good recommendation. So what do you guys gonna see next? So what's your favorite talk from today? So,
right.
It's always very, very productive for me. I like it.
One other thing I wanted to call out in this trip report is the secret lightning talks that Simon attended, which were, I guess, given before the keynote. There was one from Guy Davidson and one from Kate Gregory. Guy talking about diversity and inclusion in the C++ community, which is obviously very important. And Kate Gregory talking about things she learned when she thought she was dying from a cancer diagnosis, which sounds like an incredibly personal talk. Were either of you guys able to attend those?
Yeah. It was a plenary thing.
Okay.
I especially liked Kate's talk. It was very moving. Nothing at all C++ in it, but good life lessons nevertheless. I especially liked her lightning talk.
Very good. Very good.
Yeah, I had already had to leave at that point, so I wasn't able to catch that.
Okay. Well, next article we have is C++ coroutines and understanding operator co-await. And this is a really lengthy article going in a lot of depth about how the await operator works with coroutines. I'll be honest, I didn't have a chance to get through the article completely. Did either of you guys make it all the way through?
I did not.
I could say I got through it, but I was lying if I would say I understood all of it. So it's still new for me. This coroutine business is very fresh, and didn't have a chance to really play with them. But I think the most fun way to learn about coroutines is actually watch Gore Nishanov's talks. He actually had a very entertaining and instructive talk at CppCon this September. I think it's called something like Naked Coroutines with Networking or something along the lines of that. So his talks are always very entertaining and instructive and easy to follow. He actually builds up examples, and that's probably the best way to get into coroutines. And later on, dig deep with articles such as this one that go into a lot of details on how you can actually customize the behavior of the awaiter and the promise.
Right.
Yeah, that's a really good point, because, Gore's done several talks at this point.
Yeah. He's actually the champion of coroutines right now.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. From my understanding, the specification in the TS for coroutines is that it gives a lot of leverage for the implementers in how they actually implement the awaiters and awaitables, and it basically is just a contract between some interfaces that you can implement in your library to customize their behavior, and the compiler that hooks into those implementations and actually drives the behavior on how you choose to implement those interfaces. So it's very, very customizable. The actual library support is very, very thin, just a few types.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So I think it's still uncharted territory, and so far I haven't seen very complex examples. I mean, like production quality code using coroutines. So I'm still looking forward to some more serious examples of coroutines. But I mean, apart from the usual Fibonacci and server-client communication examples that you see everywhere, but I'm still very excited about this. So I follow everything that's available regarding this, but I haven't got a chance to actually play around with them. Have you guys?
I was going to say several. I have not, but several compilers do support it, so you should do that. Report back to us.
Yeah, it's in Visual Studio now, I believe, right?
Yeah. I think Gore actually led the implementation in Clang as well.
Yes. I do
but I'm not
that.
sure which version. Maybe 6.0.
That sounds right.
Not sure either.
And maybe you have to throw some special switch in the command line to activate the feature.
Okay, next we have Cmake 3.10.0 is available for download. Jason, you being the Cmake expert, was there anything notable in here?
There's a couple of things. That the one thing that really stood out to me is that the CPAC Debian packager generator is now available on Windows.
Oh.
So you can build Debian packages from Windows, hypothetically. It says it's, lacking some basic command line tool support, but that's interesting. That was the main thing that really stood out to me is, surprising.
Mm-hmm.
And also, there's a new support for a new Fortran compiler.
Yeah, that's very exciting. I didn't know that they were still adding support for Fortran in Cmake.
No.
Yeah.
I guess there's still a big community there.
I guess.
There's also this gtest discover tests. And if you've worked with anything like gtest and ctest, and you have your C++ tests that you've written, and you want Cmake to be able to automatically enumerate them and report on which tests have succeeded and failed, there's a good chance that you've written your own parser that goes through your C++ code and looks for the gtest macros and then adds those into your ctest targets. But there's a new gtest discover tests that was added, so it does that for you, and you don't have to have your own hand-rolled parser for that anymore. But since you gave me the platform, Rob,
go for it.
I'm going to go on a slight little rant here. So we see that there's this new CPAC for Debian and CPAC for FreeBSD. I didn't mention that one. So I go to the official cmake.org wiki for the list of package generators that exist. This page hasn't been updated. Let's see. It says it was last modified in September of 2017, but it doesn't say anything about Debian for Windows. It doesn't say anything about FreeBSD. And while I was, I thought, hey, it's been a while since I've really looked at Cmake. I'm going to look and see what other package generators there are, because I've had a problem for 5 years on macOS that the officially supported CPAC generator is PackageMaker, but PackageMaker is no longer supported by Apple. So it's a huge pain to try to find the right PackageMaker binaries on Apple's website, get them installed on your most recently updated Mac, and then use that to generate the PackageMaker binaries from CPAC so that you can have your installer. All right. Rant will be done in just a moment. I was browsing through the Cmake modules on GitHub, and I see that there is another new macOS package generator that's in here, and it says the file was first edited 4 years ago, and there's still no documentation about it or any mention as to whether or not it's in any official release.
So they gotta keep updating their docs whenever they change these, release these change logs.
I feel like at least the wiki pages, which are the first things that come up when you do Google searches or DuckDuckGo searches, are always it's hit or miss whether or not it's actually up to date and what you need to know from it. Okay, I'm done.
Okay.
Maybe a call for volunteers is in order.
It's something. And I don't even know how you're supposed to discover some of these things is my real, complaint here.
Yeah.
How am I supposed to discover what package generators there are if the official wiki page of package generators doesn't have all the package generators on it?
Yeah, that's a problem.
All right, sorry about that.
It's okay.
We're going to get comments now. We're going to get comments.
Victor, you asked us to talk about this article, Launching Tech Talks in Your Workplace, which actually makes me think of, we were talking about Jonathan Vacarro during the other article and how he gave a great talk in Meeting C++. And he talked about this when we had him on about having tech talks in your workplace.
Mm-hmm. He actually coined the term, I think, the C++ dailies.
Yes.
That's small bite-sized content that you can actually pitch in 10 minutes every day to some small group of teammates. I very much like that idea. Haven't tried it yet. I'm looking forward to it.
And this article isn't necessarily suggesting daily talks. Maybe,
no.
Doing every month or so, doing an hour-long talk.
Yeah. I think it's a format for an hour long, and it's either 1 hour long talk or several talks combining up to an hour.
Yeah.
Even lightning talks, he actually explored some of the strategies he employed in dry periods when the attendance was low and interest diminished within the company. So he tried various things, and I very much like the case study nature of the article, and I think we can all learn from various strategies that he employed here. I actually exchanged some messages with him over Twitter about this article, and myself, I found myself in the same position as I've been organizing tech sessions at my company for almost 8 years now.
Wow.
Yeah, it wasn't continuous. We had very dry periods. And we try to do it weekly. We call them Tech Session Fridays, and it varies in format. Usually an hour, live presentations most of the time. To encourage people to actually attend, we watch pre-recorded technical sessions like sessions from CppCon, CPP Now. And other conferences, and later dissect them and analyze them right there. So we post the video and discuss the things we've seen, or maybe we have a debate at the end regarding the issues and how those issues pertain to our actual development within the team.
It's a good idea.
And we actually tried live presentations as well, but people are difficult to keep interested and convince multiple speakers to actually put on a show, so to speak. And it's difficult maintaining momentum. It's quite easy to start. Surprisingly, it's quite easy to bootstrap such an effort, but it's very difficult to keep the momentum going and keep people attending and interested, and encouraging other people to submit topics for the sessions, and even more difficult to actually convince people to present, because oftentimes you have very good developers on your team, but they don't have very good presenter skills, and they're kind of shy away from the opportunity to talk to fellow developers, even though they do it every day. But when you put a formal setting on it, somehow they become shy. So I think the article it's very instructive for people trying out such a thing at their company or within their teams, and you can definitely learn tricks that he describes in the article about keeping people interested in showing up, basically. So I very much liked. I was reading the blog post, and I was just seeing my situation in his words. So it really struck a chord with me. That's why I suggested that we discuss this article in the news section.
Yeah.
Do you guys have any comments on the article per se, or?
I don't really have a workplace, so.
But in terms of actually convincing people to regularly keep up with training and keeping up with the news in the C++ community, and encouraging people to keep learning. I think this is more like something like you could perceive it as a company culture thing or as a team culture thing, as well as a personal drive to improve and continuously learn.
Yeah, it does seem like go ahead.
Sorry. For example, you do training, Jason.
Yes.
A big part of this is actually companies being willing to invest in training, and people being interested in actually showing up and signing up for those training sessions, and actually being willing to learn and improve themselves, and keeping up to date with the new standards and the new techniques and idioms. And
yeah, it's an interesting mix. When I do my own trainings, if I put on my own training, or if I'm doing something at CppCon or whatever, to hear like some portion of the people say, I'm here because I'm interested in going to one of your trainings. And the rest of the people say, I'm here, I don't know anything about you, but my company made me come, basically.
Those are the best customers. They don't ask any questions.
Well, no, I mean they've all been great students, but I'm always just kind of surprised. It's always fascinating to me to hear who came and why, and it seems that those are the two basic answers right there.
Okay.
I don't know how that translates to meetings in your company.
Yeah. Okay, last article I wanted to bring up is an important list for your holiday, my favorite coding toys of 2017. And this was written by Sarah Chips, who, of course, we had on a couple months ago talking about JewelBots. Mm-hmm. And JewelBots is on this list, as well as several other coding toys, most of which I haven't heard of. Yeah. There's the Kano computer kits, which sounded pretty cool. You're actually building a computer that you can then go and play Minecraft on. And Codapillar, this little toy where you program a caterpillar to do different moves. And there's actually these Code Babies books, which are board books with coding stuff in it, and there is one for C++. Pretty cool.
I knew those existed.
Yeah.
Like C++ for babies and C++ for infants or toddlers or something. I don't know.
Is that child abuse or what?
I don't know. Have you done any of this for your kids, Rob?
No, I haven't. I need to. We do have the one of the Goldie Blocks toys that are listed here. They're not really coding specific. They're more like just kind of general STEM toys, but I do have some of those for my daughter.
I like this description of the Code Babies book that says, a gift like this says to your partner or friend, I'm not going to stop until this kid thinks and acts just like me.
Yeah. Great. Well, we are in the holiday season now, so if you wanted to get your kids into coding, definitely check out this list.
I actually like the Codapillar for toddlers. I have a 4-year-old, so maybe I'll try it on.
Yeah, that looks like fun.
Yeah.
It does. Okay, so Victor, let's start talking about Clang Power Tools. How did you get started working with Clang Tidy?
Yeah, it all started, I think, almost a year ago. It all started actually with Clank Format, not Clank Tidy. And it started I think at the Birds of a Feather session at CppCon 2016, so last year. And actually attended that Birds of a Feather session, and people freely discussed and shared ideas about their strategies and embracing Clank Format and mitigating issues with regards to coding standards and workflows within their companies. And I thought at the time we weren't using Clank Format, so that was a very interesting experience for me. And I got charged up and full of ideas, and came back and pitched the idea to my teammates, and very quickly got their support, and we actually decided to experiment with Clank Format, and we, after endless debates about configurations and coding standards, and of course we actually reached a compromise, and in a very, very short period of time, we managed to reformat in one big push our whole code base with Clank Format, and integrate Clank Format in our daily editing workflow with auto format on save. And that was that. And everybody was very happy, and no more debates about formatting issues in code reviews and in discussions. And all the code looked uniform and okay and easy to grep for, as in terms of white space and such. So endless debates over formatting within code reviews were immediately gone.
Wow.
And that was very, very easy and deceptively easy, because after this Clank Format success, we got very excited about actually using Clank tools on Windows. because we always had tool envy. At conferences, people were always very excited about new developments in the open source ecosystem, especially in the Clang ecosystem, and always bragging and discussing about cool tools and facilities and checks continuously being added. And I always felt like I was being left out of that ecosystem. So I got very courageous, so to speak, and started to experiment with Clang Tidy on Windows. We already had an LLVM distribution for Windows, and that was the best part of it, because we didn't have to do any actual work of porting it to Windows. So the actual LLVM distribution on Windows worked just fine. And I started experimenting with Clang Tidy, and especially I experimented with the modernized checks. So the first difficult part was actually getting the code to compile under Clang, because as opposed to Clank Format, which is happy to reformat your code even though Clang is not able to actually compile it, it just needs to be able to parse it. So using Clang Tidy, it's a whole different story. You actually need to be able to compile your code base under Clang. So, even though we only use the front end, so we use the -f syntax only, we had several issues in compatibility. So our code compiled fine with Visual Studio, and we even used the highest warning levels available, like W4, and we actually didn't have any warnings. We used treat warnings as errors setting. So everything was fine under Visual Studio 2015 and later on 2017, as we migrated during this time frame to 2017. But there were non-standard constructs being used, and if you can have non-standard syntax or non-standard constructs available, people will use them. Either knowingly or not. So we had several issues of incompatibilities, and we had to address those and fix those in our code as we started building the whole code base under Clang. It actually took a lot less time than I originally anticipated, and it was actually a part-time effort. We did this as a hobby project, so to speak. So it was not something that we actually scheduled or anything, and we didn't have any actual assignees on this task. People actually pitched in to help. So I started this effort as more or less like a hobby, as I said, and other people pitched in to help because they got interested in the changes I was making to the code base, and basically volunteered their time to work on this. And we managed to do this, I think, in about 3 months on 2.5 million lines of C++ code. And on a part-time effort, at the same time, we were working on the production features of Advanced Installer, on actually shipping the product. So this was like a part-time effort, and we managed to have all the code compiled with WAll under Clang.
Wow.
That was a big milestone. It was gradual. Initially, we disabled a whole lot of warnings to be able to get up and running, because we also wanted to leverage Clang Tidy to do transformations that we wanted to perform. So it kind of was like a catch-22 kind of thing. So we wanted to use Clang Tidy to perform some transformations like member initializer, list reordering, and stuff like that were too tedious to do by hand, or to automate via grep replaces. So we disabled some warnings to be able to use Tidy, and then after using Tidy, we were able to remove even more warnings and re-enable those warnings that we initially ignored. So it was a rinse and repeat kind of thing. And after a few months, we actually managed to compile our whole base with WAll, and we got even more courageous and started tackling WExtra. We're still not there yet. lots more warnings in there to fix. And after that, we just jumped in and used the tidy checks for the first targets were obviously the modernized checks, because our code base is was C++ 98. It's a 14-year-old code base. So the modernized checks in Clang Tidy were the first target we tackled, and we were very happy with the transformations. We were able to run large-scale transformations on our code base with fairly low negative issues or impactful issues. There were issues. I won't, and I actually presented some of those I had a session about this at CppCon and later on at Meeting C++, and I presented some of the issues we encountered and how we mitigated them, and some of the workflows we developed in tackling these transformations. And aside from the modernizations and readability transformations, we also tackled reports from the static analyzer, because Clang Tidy now includes the static analyzer.
Right.
And we were able to run the static analysis and analyze the reports, and found several issues that we managed to fix this way. Yeah.
So I'm curious, just from the Clang Tidy standpoint, before you do the analysis and you're talking about the warnings that you had to fix, did you find any real bugs in your code that just simply trying to run it through Clang Tidy found for you?
Yep. Yes, we did.
Okay.
So there were several kind of issues. One that comes to mind right now is that we found some near misses in terms of virtual functions. Clang Tidy actually checks for and offers to put in the override keyword.
Right.
So we didn't leverage the override keyword because that came in later. So a lot of our code base actually relied on conventions and actually marking with some comments that, okay, this function is virtual and overrides some base class function. So we actually found some errors that derived functions in derived classes were not actually called.
Wow.
Even though they were intended to be called. So this one comes to mind, and it's a serious issue, not something that you're gonna take lightly. So we're very happy that we were able to run a modernized check that actually put overrides over all our virtual functions that were actually overridden. So now you have the security of being able to tell when somebody renames a method and your overrides don't get called. So.
Very cool.
We actually found several issues just at the stage of making it compile under Clang, ignoring Clang analysis and everything else. So just making sure it's standard compliant code, we actually found and fixed issues. And missing field initializers and uninitialized memory and other things like that. So we actually found quite a few issues.
That's interesting.
It was a very surprising experience. So we expected to find issues, but some of them were so severe that we've actually been shocked that nobody caught those issues in that horrible bug. And so definitely we didn't have any coverage in test units in that regard. Clients maybe spotted some of the issues, but they were intermittent. So we weren't able to always pinpoint the cause of certain issues, and we were amazed about some of our findings. So. It's an interesting experience, and I highly recommend that people try it on. So, because it's very worthwhile. Yes, it's a pain to fix all the warnings, but you do have huge payoffs in terms of unexpected things that you might find in your code base. It was very revealing for us, at least.
Did you end up submitting back any bug reports or support requests or anything back to the Visual Studio team for things that you thought they should have been catching all along?
No. Nope. Some of the things are just plain non-standard syntax that Microsoft officially supported. So, but in stuff like that, it usually gets abused, and the compiler just gives up in trying to warn you about stuff that's just non-standard stuff. So it will just plainly let you use unsafe things. And another category of issues is issues that could generate undefined behavior. And Clang warns you about certain classes of these issues. And those were another source of bugs for us. So issues, stuff that might cause undefined behavior. So
okay.
That was very interesting as well.
I wanted to interrupt this discussion for just a moment to bring you a word from our sponsors. Backtrace is a debugging platform that improves software quality, reliability, and support by bringing deep introspection and automation throughout the software error lifecycle. Spend less time debugging and reduce your mean time to resolution by using the first and only platform to combine symbolic debugging, error aggregation, and state analysis. At the time of error, Backtrace jumps into action, capturing detailed dumps of application and environmental state. Backtrace then performs automated analysis on process memory and executable code to classify errors and highlight important signals such as heap corruption, malware, and much more. This data is aggregated and archived in a centralized object store, providing your team a single system to investigate errors across your environments. Join industry leaders like Fastly, Message Systems, and AppNexus that use Backtrace to modernize their debugging infrastructure. It's free to try, minutes to set up, fully featured with no commitment necessary. Check them out at backtrace.io/CppCast. So you just kind of shared this journey of going into Clang Tidy and Clang Format and applying it to your code base. How did that result in creating these Clang Power Tools?
Good question, Rob. We actually started with a very primitive tool, Windows batch files. So we basically started putting together Clang command lines, very long command lines, to make sure we are able to compile our code. And a lot of the work was actually trying to use the correct project settings because we do have strong dependencies on the Windows SDK, and we did have the need to actually use all the settings from within our projects, like preprocessor definitions and include directories and platform target settings and PCH information and other kinds of information, MS build variables and other kinds of information that it's found in Visual Studio project files. That are Visual Studio project files are actually MS build scripts in themselves as syntax, and they can reference other property sheets within, and it's kind of like a recursive script invocation or inclusion. So we very quickly ran into problems in using this approach, this crude approach of automation using batch files. And there's so much things you can do with batch scripting and processing on Windows. So we immediately started implementing a PowerShell script for this. My colleague Gabriel, who's a PowerShell wizard here. I am actually not very good at PowerShell at all. So he pitched in and to help me with the script, and very quickly we were able to do very complex analysis and parsing of Visual Studio project files and spit out the correct commands to drive the GCC driver for Clang and Tidy on Windows. So all the magic in adapting and mining settings from Visual Studio and Visual Studio project configurations into Clang command lines and Clang Tidy command lines, all the magic happens within within that PowerShell script.
Okay.
And we use that PowerShell script in the process of actually running the modernized checks on our code base. And when we fixed all the warnings that Clang issued, and as soon as we achieved Clang WAL compilability, so to speak, when we were able to compile our whole code base with Clang, the first issue was how to keep that code base clean under Clang. so that new code that comes in or code changes don't break the Clang build immediately, because people were not running those scripts, developers on the team, I mean. And the first thing we did was integrate that PowerShell script into continuous integration. We use Jenkins here for continuous integration, and we immediately integrated that PowerShell script in a Jenkins job that actually compiled every SCM change. So every new check-in was compiled with Clang and issued a report that was delivered via email, and even we have a Slack bot. People love Slack here. So we actually have a Slack bot, a Jenkins Slack bot that delivers the Clang errors or warnings to developers on the team. So this way we made sure that every check-in that breaks the Clang build is immediately taken care of by the actual developer that made that check-in. So the next obvious thing was developers were not so happy about running a PowerShell script and giving command lines for actually finding the error under Clang and fixing it. So we immediately started thinking about, okay, how can we make developer lives easier in this workflow? So the obvious thing here was a Visual Studio extension, because we live in Visual Studio and developers like to have the whole experience right there in the IDE. So it was a no-brainer for us to start developing a Visual Studio extension. And we actually had experience in this matter, so we didn't start from scratch learning how to do that, because we do have a Visual Studio extension for our commercial product. Right. So we did have the knowledge in-house on how to do that. And another colleague, Ionuț, pitched in the help to develop this Clang Power Tools extension that practically comes into the developer workflow. And so every developer on the team has this extension installed, and whenever you have a triggered notification from Jenkins via email or the Slack bot that the Clang build is broken, the developer in question automatically runs the source file that is targeted to be fixed, runs it under the Clang Power Tools Visual Studio extension, and right there in Visual Studio he can see the breaking change and the report and navigate right through to the error or the warning and fix it. So this was almost obvious choice for us in making sure that developers have a easy to use workflow to fix those errors that were constantly being checked in, because people, when they check in their changes, they usually check them under Visual Studio and that's it.
Right.
They don't think about, oh, will this work under Clang? No. So we actually use it like this, like post-mortem fixing. So when an error occurs, the developer is notified and fixes the issue. And we thought about how much time we've put in developing these tools, the PowerShell scripts and the extension itself. And we thought it was appropriate for us to just make them available to the community. And that was not a goal we set out initially. We just selfishly wanted to code those tools for us to use them internally. So, but after we were able to successfully use them internally, we thought, hey, why not share those tools with the community? And we made the project available on GitHub. So the whole project is on GitHub. The Visual Studio extension code, the PowerShell scripts all the project is on GitHub. And we also maintain the Visual Studio extension on the Visual Studio Marketplace. We gave it a snazzy name like Clang Power Tools. And we made it available for free on the marketplace because it's easy to discover there. When people search for Clang from the Visual Studio Extension ID in the extension manager or within the marketplace, they will find it. It's the first result they see. And we want it to be very easily discoverable and very easy to install, so they don't have to build the extension themselves. Of course, you can check it out from GitHub and build it on your own, but we wanted to have a zero barrier of entry on using the tool, so we actually maintain a distribution V6 package for it on the marketplace right there, and you also get automatic updates. So Visual Studio automatically gives you updates for the installed extensions you have. So, for example, today we released our 11th version of the extension, version 2.0. We actually released 11 versions in just 2 months.
Wow.
Wow.
Yeah, we had quite a few of issues reported. For example, today we pushed the version 2.0, and automatically Visual Studio will inform you and automatically update your extension, and you're just ready to go. So this is the kind of workflow we want to encourage, so that people can and will leverage Clank Tidy on Windows. Because if it's difficult to use, if you have to pass huge command lines and you have to figure out what to extract from your Visual Studio projects to pass to Clank, you have no chance in using it,
right,
or convincing your teammates to embrace these tools. So it really has to be a zero effort to be able to convince your teammates to actually use the tools.
So you said zero effort. So I can go to the marketplace, I can click install, and then what? Do I have to do anything else? Does that get Clang and everything for me?
No.
Okay.
You have to install the official LLVM distribution for Windows. That's,
okay.
But that has an installer, so you just have to download it from LLVM website. It has a Windows installer package. You just click, it has an installation wizard, so you don't have to build anything. You just install the standard Windows distro for LLVM. It will work with LLVM 3.9, 4.0, and 5.0 so far.
Okay.
Whichever version of LLVM you're using, you just install it, and the Visual Studio extension will just detect it in your path and be able to run with it. So there's nothing else you need to install to make it work. Just the standard LLVM distribution for Windows that brings the compiler and Tidy and all of the other tools required.
And what versions of Visual Studio does it work with?
2015 and 2017.
Okay.
Those are the most popular right now. So.
This is.
After you get the Power Tools running, I'm guessing you obviously might need to do lots of work in your code base, the type of stuff you went through, just getting your code to be able to compile with Clang if you're only targeting Windows currently.
Exactly. And I think people should focus on their code, not on the tooling itself. So this is exactly what we wanted to achieve. People should focus on actually fixing their code and fixing the warnings and analyzing the reports from the static analyzing and doing code transformations on scale with Clank Tidy, with the modernize or readability mode checks or the performance checks. It even has performance checks. So people should focus solely on their code and don't worry about how to use the tool itself. So the tool is just a means to achieving better code and modern code. So we think people will be much more well served if we do the hard part, and we actually did the hard part in making the tool run on Windows and actually syncing all the settings with your Visual Studio projects and Visual Studio property sheets. And this part is very difficult and tedious, and it took us a lot of effort, and people should just focus on their code, not on the mechanics on how to get the tool working on Visual Studio and on Windows.
Right.
And I think having tools like this available, you basically have no excuse in actually running your code under Clang and leveraging all the power that Clank Tidy makes available for you. And you unlock a lot of possibility for custom transformations as well, because as soon as you get your code compiling under Clang, you can write your own transforms, or your own tools on top of lib tooling because libtooling exposes all the AST and all the goodness of and all the hard part of actually parsing C++ is done in libtooling. So you can implement your own tidy checks. You can implement custom transformations. We actually did implement some custom transformations for our code base. Stuff that we did in open source because it was very project specific. We did some transformations, and we're going to continue doing some transformations that are very specific to our project. Some special refactorings that we need to perform. And those are not of reuse value to anybody else, but maybe we can open source them as samples in how other people can write their own.
Right.
But I think the community does a good job there, and you'll find lots of content online about writing tidy checks and writing your own analyzers and writing any transformations on top of libtooling. So basically, you're just by unlocking this window in bringing this magical tools to the Windows ecosystem, you basically can tap in everything you see online in terms of Clang tooling itself. That's the biggest win there.
Your journey started with Clang Format. Does the
exactly.
Clang Power Tools still support Clang Format?
Surprisingly, no. We do have an open issue regarding this on GitHub, so we do want to incorporate Clank Format in this extension. Yeah, so it's our plan is that Clang Power Tools will be your one-stop shop for everything Clang on Windows, so to speak. So very soon it will get Clang Format support and tidy transformations that have auto fixes, because you can run tidy transformations with auto fixes. Those will apply Clang Format as well after fixing the code. Okay. So very soon. Keep an eye on the project very soon.
I must say this project sounds magical in a way, because I'm a huge proponent of cross-platform development because it gives you all the advantages of all the various compilers out there. And you've really, it sounds like, made it very accessible for someone who has no reason to be on multiple platforms to still get the advantages of doing cross-platform development.
People keep asking me the question, do you plan to use Clang to build your commercial product on Windows? And I keep telling them, no, we don't have any plans to build distribute our binaries built with Clang or LLVM on Windows. We just want to leverage all the tooling in the Clang ecosystem. So we're going to continue using Visual Studio 2017 and the follow-up releases, and we're building the actual bits for the Advanced Installer project with Visual Studio. So we don't have any plans on switching compiler toolchains, but we did have this tool envy, and we did want to tap into this ecosystem of Clang resources and tools and various refactoring libraries that are out there, and we just wanted to leverage those tools. And this is what we're trying to achieve. We're not trying to, and Clang Power Tools actually doesn't produce any output in terms of binaries or object files. We just use F syntax only.
Right.
So we just use the front-end compiler from Clang. Because our focus is in achieving standard compatibility in terms of your code base and leveraging the tooling in this ecosystem.
So since you only do syntax only, is it fast?
It's fast because we leverage parallel compilation for projects, and we actually emit precompiled headers. So if your Visual Studio project uses precompiled headers, and people use precompiled headers a lot on Windows, in Visual Studio, we will tap into that and pick up your PCH configuration, and we'll generate Clang PCH. We'll generate Clang PCH information for your project.
Interesting.
And we also parallelize, depending on how many cores you have on your machine, we actually saturate your machine in terms of executing parallel compilation for translation units.
Okay.
Because we don't have to worry about linking the translation units, and we don't have to worry about the dependencies between various translation units. We just parallelize the compilation. And so actually running a Clang pass through our project is much faster than running Visual Studio because we just parse it. So.
Good. Yeah. Well, that's what you'd hope for this kind of tool.
Exactly. You want it to run fast. So because you just parse to make sure, okay, it's compliant. Okay, I can still use it to run tidy checks. And this is another thing. As soon as we open sourced the project, we were amazed about the different ways in which people use Visual Studio projects on Windows. So we thought we had a very complex configuration for our build systems and our projects. We were so wrong. So we found people that were very willing to try the tool as soon as we released, and very willing to help us, and actually sent us their Visual Studio projects and their Visual Studio property sheets to help us debug the issues we had because our extension didn't properly parse their projects. So we uncovered a ton of issues that we didn't think were even on the radar when we started. So we're in pretty good shape right now. I'm very proud of our latest release, and we're gonna keep improving based on the feedback we receive from our early adopters. So far, we had close to 8,000 installs in just 2 months. We released this extension and we open sourced it actually at CppCon at the end of September. So in just 2 months, we had 8,000 installs, and people are very, very happy so far with it. And they submitted a lot of issues, but they were very eager to help. And we actually debugged a lot of stuff and fixed a lot of their issues. And I'm very happy with the momentum it gained. So cool. We welcome external contributions. The project is open source, and we've actually had people forking the project, and people pitched in and made pull requests, changes. So I was amazed about the reception within the community. I honestly didn't expect that. So I'm very happy with that, and I hope more people will use it. And the end goal really is not about the tool itself. The end goal is achieving better code quality. Right. Within your projects. So focus on code quality, modernize your projects. If you have an old code base on C++ 98, and if you can upgrade to a newer version of C++, I know that's an issue that's difficult in many companies, modernizing the tool chains. But if you can do it, modernize your code, your teammates will thank you. People usually ask me if I can give a return of investment or give them some metric in terms of our experience in using these tools within our commercial products. So I always tell them that the best metric is that my teammates are happy. They're happy because they work in a modern code base right now, and we have more confidence in the code because of finding and fixing reports from the static analyzer, and we were very amazed about the subtle latent bugs that we uncovered just by making it compile in a standard conformant way. And if your teammates are happy, I think that's the best metric for a success story. Right. In terms of developer tooling.
So I'm looking at the link right now to Clang Power Tools in the marketplace, which I'll put in the show notes, and it definitely looks really easy to use. One last question I had was, you talked about how you're using Clang as your part of your CI script. Is there any way to go from I'm using Clang Power Tools and I now want to apply it so that everyone in my team, can see these reports, through Jenkins CI or something like that? Can I use Clang Power Tools as part of that, or do I need to go and kind of implement that separately?
So the Clang Power Tools Visual Studio extension, it's just a shell to get things driving within the IDE. Behind the scenes, the actual work is done by the same PowerShell script file that I mentioned earlier. So the Visual Studio extension actually hosts its own PowerShell script within the package, and it runs the same script that you can use for automation. So the same functionality. Basically, the script is the brains of the tool. The PowerShell script does every operation with regards to parsing the Visual Studio project files and extracting all the relevant settings and constructing the appropriate command line for the Clang and Clank Tidy. So the extension is just a shell that allows you easy integration with toolbar, context menu. It gives you context-aware information and context-aware output in the right places you would expect in the IDE, in the output window, in the error window. It handles navigation to errors at the right line and column, and it gives you all the goodness of integration within the IDE. But the actual brains within the tool is the PowerShell script. So you can take that PowerShell script, which is available on GitHub, and you can integrate it in your workflow, in whichever way you see fit. We use it with Jenkins, for example. So, and it's very configurable. That PowerShell script has switches that you can configure and basically create your own workflow. Either tidy or compilation, doesn't matter.
Very cool.
And it can spit out reports in like tidy would. So there's no difference in terms of output.
Okay, well, Victor, it's been great having you on the show today. Where can people find you or find your company online? So
you can find me on Twitter. So I guess you'll put my Twitter handle in the show notes, so it's no need to mention it. So you can definitely follow us on GitHub. I encourage you to start the project so you can receive updates if you're following up on issues. Do submit issues. If you try the tool and you find issues within your projects, do submit them. We try to take care of issues as soon as possible. We try to keep up an agile pace and release as quick as possible. We usually release weekly with fixes. So, but we do need your input. So use the tool, give us feedback, contribute if you have the passion and the time. Why not? So you can find us at clangpowertools.com, and you can definitely chat on Twitter and even reach out to me on Slack. So you just search for Clank Power Tools and you'll probably find me as well on Google. So. If you're interested in a more detailed story about our case study, you can watch the recordings from CppCon. It's called Bringing Clank Tidy Magic to Visual Studio C++ Developers. And a similar version of that talk, but updated with the latest developments, will be available from Meeting C++ conference in Berlin. So video is still not out yet, but if people are interested in a more detailed approach.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for your time today, Victor.
Thanks for having me. It was a pleasure talking with you.
Yeah.
Thanks so much for listening in as we chat about C++. I'd love to hear what you think of the podcast. Please let me know if we're discussing the stuff you're interested in. Or if you have a suggestion for a topic, I'd love to hear about that too. You can email all your thoughts to feedback@cppcast.com. I'd also appreciate if you like CppCast on Facebook and follow CppCast on Twitter. You can also follow me at Rob W. Irving and Jason at LeftKiss on Twitter. And of course, you can find all that info and the show notes on the podcast website at CppCast.com. Theme music for this episode is provided by podcastthemes.com. CppCast.com. Theme music for this episode is provided by podcastthemes.com.